Picture this. It's the 19th century, and the world is changing fast. For two of Asia's oldest civilizations, China and Japan, a massive choice looms: adapt or be dominated. This is the incredible story of how they face that exact challenge, and how their choices sent them down two totally different paths into the modern world.
So let's just frame our whole conversation around this one big question. How do great empires, these places steeped in centuries of tradition, react when a future they can't control comes knocking at their door? Because their answers didn't just reshape their own countries, they reshaped the entire planet. And these images, wow, they just perfectly capture that moment of truth for both nations. On the left, you've got Japan's view. Commodore Perry's massive, intimidating black ships just showing up in 1853. It was basically a demonstration of Western military tech, demanding they open up. But on the right, you see China's reality, which was way more brutal. The full-blown, devastating Opium War, a conflict that just shattered the authority of the ruling Qing Dynasty. Two very different shocks, right? And two very different starting points for what came next.
So, to really get why their reactions were so different, we've got to rewind a little bit. Let's set the stage and take a look at the world they were living in, Qing China and Tokugawa Japan, right before everything was turned upside down.
So here's the lay of the land. You've got China, run by the Qing Dynasty. It's this vast, sprawling continental empire, totally confident that it's the center of the universe. Then you have Japan. It's a much smaller island nation, ruled by the Tokugawa Shogunate, and it had been deliberately cut off from the rest of the world for over 200 years. This difference in scale and structure, a huge bureaucratic empire versus a compact feudal island, well, that's going to turn out to be absolutely critical. All right, let's start with how Japan responded. Theirs was a pretty radical approach, a top-down, lightning-fast revolution that was designed to completely remake the nation from the ground up. The absolute game changer was the Meiji Restoration in 1868. Now, this wasn't just a simple change of leadership, it was a complete overhaul of their society. The shogun, the military dictator who had run Japan for centuries, was out, and power was restored to the young Emperor Meiji. This was brilliant because it gave the nation's elite a powerful, unifying symbol they could rally around to push for some really radical changes. And if you want to understand their entire strategy, it really boils down to this one powerful slogan: Fukoku Kyohei, which means rich country, strong army. The clarity here is just striking. The logic was super simple. If we want to protect Japan from the West, we have to become like the West. That means becoming industrially rich and militarily powerful, period. And just look at the insane speed of this transformation. I mean, it's staggering. In 1868, the Restoration kicks off. Just 4 years later, they've already got their first railway and are making education mandatory. By 1889, they have a modern constitution. And then, get this, by 1905, in an event that shocked the whole world, Japan actually defeats a major European power, Russia, in a war. This was basically modernization on fast forward. And these two pictures, this is what that change looked like on the ground. On the left, you see a modern textile factory, that's the rich country part. And on the right, you have these young soldiers, the strong army part, a powerful Western-style military that was fueled by this new intense nationalism. Rich country, strong army in the flesh. Okay, so that was Japan's swift, targeted revolution. Now let's contrast that with China's journey, which was so much longer, so much more painful. It was really a century of turmoil that ended up tearing the old empire apart. So, here's the crucial difference. While Japan's leadership was unifying the country and modernizing like crazy, China was completely fracturing. It was getting battered by more foreign wars and being ripped apart by these massive internal rebellions. The ruling Qing Dynasty was just overwhelmed. Burdened by the enormous size of the empire and centuries of tradition, they were just too slow, too hesitant to make the kinds of changes Japan was making. So instead of a restoration, China got a total collapse. And with the emperor gone, this massive power vacuum opened up, leading to this long, brutal struggle for China's soul. On one side, you had the Kuomintang, the nationalists. They wanted a modern republic, kind of like the ones in the West, but their power was all in the cities, and they just couldn't connect with the millions and millions of poor farmers in the countryside. And on the other side, the Chinese Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong. They had a much more radical idea, a complete revolutionary overthrow of the entire old society, built on the power of the peasant. You really can't understand Mao's strategy without talking about the legendary Long March.
Facing total destruction, the communists went on this incredible 6,000-mile retreat across China. It was an absolutely brutal ordeal, but it became the foundational myth of the party. It solidified their leadership and, crucially, won them tons of support among the rural poor they met all along that grueling route. And this photo, man, it just captures the essence of their success. You see, these aren't just soldiers. They're builders. They're connected to the land, to the peasant class. So while the nationalists were trying to unite the country from the top down, the communists were building a revolution from the ground up, one village at a time.
So, okay, both nations eventually modernized, but their paths had dramatically different costs and consequences. Let's take a look at the 20th century and ask, what was the price of modernity for each of them?
Well, for Japan, that strong army policy led directly to aggressive imperialism and ultimately to World War II. After a devastating defeat and occupation by the US, Japan was totally transformed. They adopted a new peace constitution, giving up war, and then, incredibly, re-emerged as a global economic powerhouse. The 1964 Tokyo Olympics became this huge symbol of their astonishing post-war miracle.
China's path to becoming a unified, modern state was achieved through just immense struggle. After fighting a brutal civil war against the nationalists and a devastating invasion by Japan, it was Mao Zedong's Communist Party that finally came out on top, establishing the People's Republic of China in 1949. And so, by the middle of the 20th century, our two neighbors had finally arrived at their destinations. Let's take a final look at the truly divergent destinies they had forged for themselves. This final comparison really says it all, doesn't it? On the left, the result of Japan's path, a rebuilt, bustling, capitalist democracy, symbolized by modern Tokyo. And on the right, the result of China's path, a unified communist state, born from a peasant revolution, symbolized by those determined soldiers who built it. Two modern nations, but two utterly different worlds. So if we boil it all down, here's the key difference. Japan's modernization was a kind of conservative revolution. It worked because its small, unified ruling class could pivot really fast, adopting Western ideas in order to preserve their nation. In China, the ruling class failed. That created a power vacuum that could only be filled by a true social revolution from the bottom up. A revolution that didn't just want to modernize, but wanted to tear down the old world and build a brand new one. And that leaves us with one last big thought. When you look at everything from trade and military alliances to political systems and national identities, how do the echoes of these very different choices made way back in the 19th century continue to shape not just East Asia, but the entire world that you and I live in today?